Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I think I'd have a fair idea what's on the top of your mind now that we have to wait some more time for American election results. So while that suspense continues, competing for headlines today has been the arrest of Arnab Goswami. Now, Arnab Goswami is a polarizing figure. He is very popular among some people. He is also very unpopular among others. I might think that his journalism is not journalism. It is something else in the name of journalism. But there will be many more of you who will think that he actually represents a shining light of Indian journalism. So I'm not getting into an argument on that. In the true sense of cut the clutter, I will first of all tell you what exactly the case is and what the situation is. And then towards the end, I might give you a little bit of my opinion. So a large team of Raigad police this morning came to his place and arrested him physically, and sort of he claims he was manhandled. We don't see in the videos any evidence of manhandling as in beating up, but we certainly see pushing and shoving, shouting and screaming. But in the manner that the police came in, the strength in which they came in and how they were armed and who they included, they also included some well-known encounter specialists of Mumbai police. They told you that this was a story of a case of overkill. Anyway, he was arrested and taken away. Now, several questions emerged immediately. First was, must you defend his freedom of journalism? Yes, you defend everybody's freedom of journalism. Second, that if that is the case, then this case is not about anything that he did journalistically. This case is about a personal crime. And there is an aggrieved party at the other end who are the wife and daughter of a person who committed suicide along with his mother. So this is a daughter-in-law and her daughter fighting for their husband and father and mother-in-law. And they haven't got justice, so they should get justice. Now, let me first answer that with some details. So what exactly is this case? Because we get confused. There are many cases that Bombay police Mumbai police has filed against Arnab Goswami and Republic TV. So what exactly is this case is what we need to know first. Now, Anvay Nayak was a Mumbai designer, interior designer or architect, 53 years old, who ran a company called Concord Designs Private Limited. Now, he says that he did a lot of the work for Arnab Goswami's new studio, etc., and that he wasn't paid. Now, what happened was that in May of 2018, he was found dead, hanging on an upper floor in his house in Alibag. Alibag, as we know, is on the outskirts of Mumbai. In fact, it's across the water from Mumbai. It's on the mainland. Mumbai is an island. And Alibag is an area where a lot of the rich and famous of Mumbai have their farmhouses or beach houses. So he was found hanging on an upper floor in the house. And his mother was also found strangled to death on a sofa on the ground floor. Now, immediately, police in Alibag registered this as a case of murder and accidental death. How that worked, I don't know. But they said that postmortem shows or indicates that the mother was murdered, she did not commit suicide. And this one's death was a case of accident. So once again, it's difficult to see how that sounds reasonable. Nevertheless, they first proceeded like that and registered the case like that. As they went along, they looked at the place, they found a suicide note, and you will see those pictures on our screen. They found a suicide note that Anvay Nayak had written, where he said the reason he was committing suicide was that he was owed a lot of money essentially by three people, and now he had to pay his contractors. Contractors were chasing after him, and that he was living in fear and frustration and this constant fright. Since no justice has been done, he and his mother have decided to end their lives. Now, when that happens, that leads to a case under our law, under IPC, under section 306 of abetment of suicide. That is when you push somebody in a situation where he or she thinks that there is no choice but suicide. There is no justification for suicide. Suicide is a crime in India. But you drive somebody to suicide, that's a crime. So a case of that crime was to be registered. Now the police investigated that. In the course of time, the police said that, look, we don't think this case is made out. There is no evidence that it's a case of abetment of suicide. So they went to court in 2019, in April 2019, Raigad police, under whom this area comes, they went to the local court and said there is no evidence, we should be allowed to close this case. So once you have an FIR, to close the case, you have to go to a court. The court permitted them to close the case. Now timelines are very important. April 2019, BJP is still in power. Devendra Fadnavis's government is in power, and it is no secret that Arnab Goswami is a favorite of the BJP, and anybody who has doubts can see from the responses today. So there was always this question as to whether the government had been too hasty in burying this case. Nevertheless, if you ask me, once the legal authorities, the police have done this and a court has accepted this, that is the due process of law, and that process was completed on that day. Until then something happened in Maharashtra in the next few months. As you know, there was an election in Maharashtra. It was a split election. So BJP and Shiv Sena had contested together. If they had stayed together, they had the majority, but the Shiv Sena said the chief ministership was committed to them but not given to them. So they decided not to go with the BJP. So the three-way split, Shiv Sena had 50 plus, a couple more than NCP, and Congress had 40 plus. Together, these three had a majority, and unless one of these broke up big time or one of these joined the BJP, it wasn't possible for BJP to form a government. So NCP, Congress and Shiv Sena. But because Shiv Sena had kept the BJP out of power there, and of the three parties, they had the easiest option of going back to the BJP wherever they felt like. They got the pride's place in this government. So the chief minister is Uddhav Thackeray of Shiv Sena, and his son is a cabinet minister, but it's well known, it's quite evident that he is the second most powerful person in the cabinet. In some manners, he might even be the most powerful, as it seems in this case. But that's politics, let me leave that aside. So what happened was, in May of this year, Adnya Nayak, who's the daughter of Anvay Nayak, she came to meet the Home Minister of Maharashtra, Anil Deshmukh. And he recorded this in a tweet that he put out, which we are sharing with you. In that, she said to him that justice has not been done in this case, that her father and grandmother were forced to commit suicide because these companies or these entities had refused to pay her father's bills, and her father, as a result, had been driven deep into debt. He was buried into debt, and out of shame and frustration and fear that contractors who he owed money to will come and kill him or kidnap him. In fact, he had also registered a complaint of some kind in the local police station that there was a threat against him. He and his mother were forced to kill themselves. So Anil Deshmukh then says, as Home Minister, he asked CID to reopen the inquiry. But now when the police came to arrest Arnab Goswami, they claimed that this was not based on that CID investigation, but this was the Raigad police itself reopening the case because of whatever evidence they had found. And they said that Raigad police had gone to court, local court, and local court had permitted them to open the case. Now, as you know, something changed between April 2019 and the last months of 2019. That's when we had all this tamasha of the governor Bhagat Singh Koshyari swearing in Devendra Fadnavis's government at 5:47 a.m., hoping that there will be defections from NCP. Defections did not happen, and this three-way government came in, this three-legged government came in, so the BJP was out of power. And then, you know, there is no hostility of the kind that you see between two estranged brothers or two estranged friends. Mahabharata, after all, was among siblings or cousins. In this case, because BJP and Shiv Sena had gone at the opposite ends, this became a kind of open warfare between Shiv Sena and the BJP. And so somebody, a big shot or a prominent face in the media who might have been the darling of the establishment earlier was now no longer the darling of the establishment in the state. Still the darling of the establishment at the center, but no longer darling of the establishment in the state, because the establishment in the state had changed, or the establishment in the state had changed its political direction, affiliations, etc., etc. That is the nub of the politics here. The legal situation, I told you, a 2018 case of twin deaths, initially dismissed as one murder, one accidental death, later investigated as abetment to suicide, police going to the court saying we have no evidence, court accepting it, allowing the case to be withdrawn. Then the daughter coming to the Home Minister after the government changed from BJP to forces hostile to the BJP. So to understand this, we have to keep in mind this politics. Now many other things are said about this. One is that why are you all jumping to the defense of Arnab? Because in other states, BJP governments are giving similar treatment, in fact worse, to journalists merely for doing their own jobs. In this case, this is not a case about Arnab doing anything journalistic. This is a case about his owing money or allegedly owing money to somebody who claims that he was driven to suicide. Maybe the person was suicidal. But the fact is, if you look at all the cases, and UP is the champion of these, I would say, mostly trumped up cases against journalists. And when you ask them, very often the defense is, but how is so-and-so a journalist? So-and-so is only a stringer, so-and-so is only writing tweets. But the fact is that in UP, and I'm not running through the entire list with you because it will take time, but journalists have been charged under sedition, very bad law, Official Secrets Act, rioting, incitement to riots, and UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. In fact, a Kerala journalist who was going to Hathras to cover the rape and murder case, he was arrested, he was charged under sedition and UAPA, and is locked up in a jail in Mathura. Someone else has just been bailed out after a month in jail for merely putting out a tweet. And when this was happening, some of us said, and I said in Katta Clutter as well as National Interest, I said, don't set bad precedents, because once you set a bad precedent, it will be followed. Somebody will repeat it. And once you set a bad precedent, the next person or power repeating it will make it worse. And then there'll be a vicious cycle of worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, because nobody will call an end to it. Because why would anybody want to square that circle? Let it go on. It's a cycle or circle of revenge. So this happened in Uttar Pradesh. Then we saw in non-BJP states also catching it. we saw this in Odisha, where cases have been filed, and now a journalist was arrested earlier. Now the CFO of a media organization run by somebody who happens to be married to a former leader of the ruling party there, BJD, who subsequently joined the BJP. So he is seen as somebody who betrayed the big leader there, Naveen Patnaik, who is a nice guy to the extent that I know him personally for many, many, many years, even since he became so prominent in politics. Nevertheless, the person I am mentioning, Baijayanth Panda, he joined the BJP and is now one of the vice presidents of BJP. So I told you, once you set bad precedents, somebody will take the leaf from your book and make it worse. So UP started it, this whole idea of throwing FIRs at people, serious charges at people, and really tough charges like atrocities on Scheduled Castes and Tribes Act. One woman journalist who went to the village that Narendra Modi has adopted in his constituency and spoke to a Dalit woman. Obviously the cops went to the Dalit woman, had her file a case, and she was charged for atrocities on Scheduled Castes and Tribes. So once you start doing all this, all the other chief ministers are also making a note that, look, I forgot this. Law and order is a state subject. And if that guy can do it, मैं क्या इतना गया बीता हूँ कि I can't do any of this? So they all start using it. And then, you know, once you file a case, once you arrest somebody, somebody has to go and take bail. You may arrest somebody on a Thursday afternoon when Friday is a holiday, and conveniently on Monday, judge may go on casual leave for a day or 2 days. So you can keep people locked up, and then they can spend many years fighting those cases. And in our courts, it's very difficult to get an FIR withdrawn or a case withdrawn even when no evidence is found. So then use the process as punishment. So I'd say that in recent times, this is not the first time it's been invented, but in recent times, this was started by Uttar Pradesh government, Yogi Adityanath's government, and that has opened the floodgates. But two wrongs do not make a right. So just as we opposed what he was doing, we also opposed what Odisha is doing, we also oppose what Maharashtra government is doing. In this case, whatever be our view on Arnab Goswami's journalism, and certainly your view can be much more different, completely to the contrary of mine, but that doesn't matter. There are other complications in this case, because unlike some of the other victims, say in UP and elsewhere, this is not a victim. Arnab Goswami is not a victim who's without protection. You've had this incredible situation today. In fact, a historic situation. I don't think in the history of democracies you've seen this, that a journalist is complaining of harassment by the state and is being harassed by the state, because you can see that this action by Maharashtra police is arbitrary, is unlawful, is vindictive, is bound to fail going ahead. But having said that, to imagine that such a journalist then is being backed in public and verbally through very tough tweets by the Home Minister of the country, by the Finance Minister of the country, by the External Affairs Minister of the country, by so many members of the Central Cabinet and top political leaders of the BJP. I mean, that tells you that this is not just one helpless journalist being targeted by one marauding state government. This is a journalist who's today the victim of a fight between a very bad, ugly, bare knuckles fight between the central government and the Shiv Sena-led government in Maharashtra. I know it's a three-party government, but I'm tempted to call it a Shiv Sena government, because that's what it is. And that's where the war is. It's BJP and Shiv Sena. And you have to understand, once again, I have to get behind the clutter of this a little bit. Sushant Singh Rajput case. When Sushant Singh Rajput case happened, Arnab Goswami and his Republic TV channels, they were in the forefront of making a much bigger story out of it. They made it a very big story, and they invented that hashtag Justice for SSR. It played in Bihar politics, and then what turns it took. From all evidence, it looked like it was a case of suicide. Nevertheless, nobody knows for sure. There was an inquiry by Mumbai police. The center intervened in this case. Bihar government, which is a BJP and BJP ally government, they intervened in this case. Something truly remarkable happened in India's constitutional, federal and jurisprudential history, that a case was registered in Bihar in a criminal case, alleged murder case, when the state had no jurisdiction over the place of occurrence of that alleged crime. Can you imagine if this starts happening in India, that a crime happens in one state, you can register a case in the other state, that police then comes and says we want to investigate. In a criminal case, the scene of crime, the scene of occurrence, the place of occurrence is a crucial thing, but jiski lathi uski bhains. So in this case, the center and the state colluded, and when they went to Supreme Court asking that this should go to the CBI, Supreme Court said yes, let it go to CBI. I think Supreme Court erred in that. Supreme Court should have said that this should be in Maharashtra, because the state government has the authority over law and order. So Supreme Court transferred it to CBI. So CBI came in, and then the NCB, Narcotics Control Bureau, came in. These are all central agencies which have pan-state jurisdictions. And they began doing khatpat around the Shiv Sena government, and all these rumors emerged that Sushant Singh Rajput was probably murdered by who? Maybe by people who didn't like him, the big shots in Bollywood. If not that, maybe by drug mafias, Maybe his girlfriend was involved with drug mafias. So under that noise and under that kangaroo court environment where Arnab was judge, jury, executioner, everything, they created a situation where that poor Riya Chakravarti and her brother was arrested. They were kept in jail for a long time, denied bail. And now, as you see in the final order of the High Court, it looks like she was being held completely on non-existent charges. But the fact is, that was the power of the media and those channels and their allied channels and the ecosystem in social media, that you could get people like this in jail for a very long time. So while this was happening, more rumors began to emerge. And some rumors, there were pictures, as you can see. Oh, see this Aditya Thackeray, Uddhav Thackeray's son. Who's he going with? He's driving with Disha Salian. Disha Salian was somebody who briefly worked, apparently, although some people deny it, as Sushant Singh Rajput's manager, who also, this is like a filmy story, but maybe a coincidence, died by suicide a little bit before Sushant Singh Rajput's death. So once again, without any evidence, a connection was made. And then it was said that she had been gang raped and murdered. She did not kill herself. Although her family said the opposite, forensics said the opposite, police said the opposite. And what was the insinuation then? Insinuation was, look at this, Thackeray driving with her, and you can add 2 and 2 and draw your own conclusions. I mean, these were so wild that I won't even mention that. It so turned out that the woman with him in the car had the first name Disha, but it wasn't the same Disha. It wasn't Disha Salian. So this was a completely fake insinuation, but it spread. Now there is somebody in power, somebody who's a minister, whose dad is the chief minister, who has inherited the culture of Shiv Sena, which is the bully of bullies. They are now being bullied in this situation. And this is almost like a charge of rape, murder, etc., which is all being spread through this hush-hush whisper campaign. So as that built up, then this became a proper blood feud. And there, while the central government, which detests the Maharashtra government and wants to bring it down as soon as possible, in fact, if possible, yesterday instead of today or tomorrow, between them and a very tough state government headed by a party and a political force which has only one essential skill, and that is street fighting. They are the national champions in street fighting. So in this fight, Arnab Goswami got caught as somebody who the center was using, or at least that's how the state government saw it, and that's how they have now retaliated. Like, there's no justification for it, but I am explaining the politics of it. The clever thing they've done this time is they filed many other cases against him in recent past. They filed the case, but all those cases had either to do something with his journalistic practice, or with his journalistic entrepreneurship, fixing of TRPs, journalistic entrepreneurship, inciting communal tensions and riots, his journalistic practice, Palghar, communalizing the Palghar incident, journalistic practice. Whenever that happens, the immediate thing is, oh, he's being targeted for his journalism. In this case, the state government thinks that they found another case which is about a personal allegation of a personal crime. So the defense of freedom of speech, that you are targeting me for something I'm doing in my journalism, doesn't work. On the other hand, Akalmand ko ishara kafi hota hai. Everybody knows what this is about. This is about this really ugly fight, political fight, in which journalism has got caught. I won't say unintentionally, intentionally. So sometimes you benefit from it. In fact, oft times you benefit from it. Sometimes you get into trouble for it. Once again, we cannot say that somebody deserves to get into trouble for something, because that would be the same as saying, oh, so-and-so got assaulted or harassed or whatever because of the way the person was dressed or the way the person was conducting himself or herself. Nobody asks for anything. Nobody deserves any harassment or any excess, even if it's legal excess like this. So I will close this now with one final comment. I told you I will give you a little opinion in the end. There is also a 50-word editorial that we have written on this, unequivocally condemning this. Please see that on my screen. But also I'll give you my own view, which is that evidence-free journalism of inquisition of targeted individuals is what Arnab Goswami has built his business model on. What is the business model? Evidence-free journalism of inquisition of targeted individuals. Yet, a serves you right approach is not correct for us in this situation, because if we do not demand justice for those we disagree with, then we are being dishonest to ourselves, and we are being dishonest to our commitment to liberty and our constitution and our individual freedoms. Because belief in individual liberty, democracy, dignity, rule of law, it can't be qualified or selective. That's why even if you might turn up our noses on his journalism, we have to see what the state is doing wrong and to protest against that, which we are doing. And while, as I said again, I might be turning my nose at his kind of journalism, it's quite likely that a very large number of you, or maybe a majority of you, really think that that is the most fragrant journalism, and you should actually take deep breaths instead of turning up your nose. But that's your choice. We are a free country. Since this whole argument is about us being a free country and people having the freedom of speech, I also cannot grudge you the freedom to find journalism that I might find abhorrent to be the best in the country.